everyone! Welcome to my interactive story stream. I've done a couple of these before. This one's taking place in the same world as the last ones have, the world of RCO, which is a magical fantasy world that is starting to be in a little bit of turmoil, is just kind of beginning to take place. The story's kind of growing richer about what's going on in this world through the individual stories of individual characters. I think at some point I'm going to bring some of these characters together and see what happens from there. But right now I've got um, one standalone story about Mara, a blacksmith's apprentice who had an encounter with a cursed sword, and Kai, a shell game hustler who inadvertently became a magical spy. So those are the stories that I've told so far. Kai's story kind of went on for a couple of episodes. It honestly probably could have been a little bit shorter. I'm still kind of working on pacing. I've got some notes to help with the pacing of all of that. But for right now, um, yeah, I've got a little bit of I've got a faint pacing outline for my concept for this story. So I think it's going to be pretty sharp and pretty nice. At the beginning of the stream, before people show up, I usually like to just kind of chat for a little bit. I also have my little dice box here, and I like to come up with some names because characters pop up and they need names, and coming up with a name on the fly is very hard, at least for me. Some people are great at naming. It's one of my it's definitely my Achilles heel when it comes to storytelling and writing things. I hate coming up with names, and I hate coming up with titles. So most of my poems are untitled, which is a little inconvenient. I'm going to try to start titling them a little bit better. Thank you. Hi, Sandra. How's it going? Yeah, I got this. I got this quite a while ago at. I went to Pier 1 for my dad to go birthday shopping for my mom, and I ended up also getting this for me. So there's a little set of 3 boxes, and I am obsessed. I love shiny things. And at first I was keeping my dice in just like a little Ziploc bag because I didn't want them to get lost. And then I remembered that I have this like gorgeous box that looks like it belongs in a dragon's treasure hoard, and it didn't have anything inside it. Um, so yeah, I love this thing. Um, and then I've also got my little shimmery blue dice. Um, so what I do with this usually is I'll just kind of I'll roll some dice to come up with uh, character names. I'll use the D20 for consonants and the D6 for vowels and also Y, um, because that's how it fits. I know I've got layers and layers of shiny things. One day everything in my life will be shiny. People will walk into my house and just kind of be blinking and dazzled. Is my current goal. Actually, I can't decide if I want it to be super cozy or super shiny, but I guess I could get it to be both. I could figure that out. Um, so for now, I'm just going to mess around with my dice. Cozy with a sheen, yes, that is the dream aesthetic goal. Um, and I think I'll pull it off. I don't know if my little if I can get my house to look like the top of my desk here. I think this kind of works pretty well as cozy with a sheen. If this is the vibe of my whole house, I think that I will be very, very happy. But for now, uh, I've got an apartment, and my ability to decorate it is limited by both it's not mine and funds. So I just decorate my desk and drape shiny fabrics over things that I don't like to look up. Um, but yeah, I'm just chilling. I don't know if there's anybody else here right now. It says I've got 0 viewers, but I know Sandra's here, so that's not the case. If you're here and you haven't said anything yet, please introduce yourself. Part of what drives this stream is interaction. A big part of what drives this stream is interaction between me in the audience. So please get comfy, introduce yourself, say hey, and I will see you soon. Oh, that reminds me, I'm just going to drop some links really quick before we start into the chat. I made a little sticky note. So I have a Discord where, among other things, like I'll talk about these streams and stuff, but they're also a really nice. It's also a really nice creative space. I've got some really lovely people in the Discord who I really admire and love talking to, and I think you'll like it a lot if you stop by. So here's a link to join my Discord if you want to be invited to that. Um, I'm also just gonna drop a blog in case you want to find more of my writing. It's mostly poetry on here. There's a tiny bit of fiction, but I don't have a ton of fiction up. I write a lot of fiction. I just don't post a lot of fiction because a lot of it's the middle of a very large project and it doesn't make sense to post. You haven't missed anything yet. Hi, Jesse. You haven't missed a thing. I'm gonna start actually telling the story in just a couple minutes. Probably I'm looking at starting it at like, this is gonna sound oddly specific, but at like 4:03. Um, but no, you haven't missed anything. So I'll give once a couple more people show up, I think I'll give a quick little summary of just what the setting is of this magical world, and we will dive into Brooke's story. Brooke is our main character today. Um, so yeah, I'm just gonna mess around. I've got my dice here. I'm coming up with some names. I don't think I'm gonna need a ton of names. Yes, it's a magical. So we're working with. Well, I'm working with. You guys are working with too. It's an interactive, collaborative story. But I've created for these stories this magical world called Arceo. In this world, there are 7 kingdoms. The kingdoms are pretty much at peace right now, but there's kind of some uncertainty going on. There's different magical artifacts that are kind of they've all been dormant for a really long time, but magic kind of staying at a stable level is important to the world's functioning properly. Um, and there's kind of some unrest. A lot of these magical artifacts are starting to degrade or cause problems. So, for example, in my first story that I told in this world, yep, in my first story that I told in this world, my main character Mara, who is a blacksmith's apprentice, was asked to fix a magical sword that was like a cursed blade that was being kind of contained by like magic imbued metal that was worked into the hilt, and she ends up having a really intense adventure. You can find that. It's still up on my YouTube, I think. It is, definitely is. But yeah, so there's different things like that. So what happened is the whole sword is magical, but kind of the way there's a couple different ways that magic works in this world. Some of it's intuitive. It's pretty intuitive. But to be able to make a magical object, you also have to know how to make the object. So in the lore of this world, there were 7 cursed swords that were used to conquer the world many centuries ago that have like really intense evil energies that can get people to like follow you and so on and so forth. And when this age of conquest kind of ended, different magic workers kind of wrapped the hilts of the sword. Hello! Wrapped the hilts of the sword in metal that contained magic spells that kind of kept the evil contained. But when that started to break down, um, if you wanted to, you could make in this world you could make magical chili cheese fries. There's kind of a uh, some of the limit is just sort of in what you can do and the long lastingness of it. So you could make, probably in this world, you could make lucky chili cheese fries, if you were focusing, let's say you're making some chili cheese fries and you're really focused on like, I'm making these chili cheese fries for my family, and this is going to help them to be well and be focused. You can use magic to give people luck, essentially. Um, I'm still kind of working on the magic system a little bit. Thank you for all these questions, by the way. It's really getting me thinking and getting me focused. So it's not exactly luck. It's magic that kind of appears like luck, if that makes sense. So it makes you a little bit more fortunate. It makes events a little bit more likely to turn in your favor. If you were gonna flip a coin, it'd be more likely to go heads than it would be to go tails, kind of thing. Um, there's other magic stuff that relates to perception. There's stuff that relates to yeah, it's an illusion of luck. It's not actually luck. It just kind of turns the tide of life in your favor a little bit if you want to use it that way. Um, and it could look like luck to an outsider that doesn't know that there's magic at play. There's also magic that can. So far, we've had magic used to teleport. We've had magic used to affect the weather. We've had magic used to influence people's thoughts to a degree. But yeah, so magic can do all kinds of things, and different people sort of have different aptitudes. Not a lot of people can do magic, and different people sort of have different aptitudes for the kinds of magic that they can do, just kind of based on um, sort of their character and what they're good at focusing on. And so, in this world, if you can do magic, you can't necessarily do all magic. Um, but it's kind of like so it's a little bit like creativity in the sense that if somebody's creative, um, it's not. There is definitely some classism with magic, so I'm going to explain that in a second. But magic is kind of like creativity in that you could say somebody's creative and maybe they are really, really good at singing and they're also good at um, sewing. I'm borrowing an example from a friend. So she's really, really good at singing and really, really good at sewing, but if you threw an instrument at her that she had never played before, she couldn't necessarily play it right away, and she might not ever have an aptitude for that because people just kind of have different talents with it, I think. So kind of like in that sense, magic is analogous to creativity. So magic isn't necessarily owned by the high class. Um, so, but it is a little bit. So the way it kind of ends up shaking out is that there are magic academies where people go to learn to focus their magic and focus their little. Thank you. So there's magic academies where people go to learn to focus their magic and explore their aptitudes and get more sharp at it, so they don't accidentally cause problems. Because in this, you could absolutely accidentally cause problems. For example, in going back to my first story, Mara, the blacksmith's apprentice, didn't know that she had magic, and her parents didn't tell her because they didn't want her to try to focus on it without uh, without having any expertise. Because if she was in a foul mood, and let's say somebody down the road has really annoyed her, but she's got to make horseshoes for that person. If she's in a really foul mood, she could accidentally curse those horseshoes. So it's dangerous to know about magic with that, to explore magic and to work with your magic and develop it if you don't have skills. She actually does get in trouble as soon as somebody finds out that she has magic. Yeah. Um, there's not too many yes, exactly, similar to going to musical. You have a natural aptitude and it helps you focus that skill. Um, and a lot of people end up just not even realizing that they have magic because if you don't have the money or the resources to go to one of the academies, I was kind of looking at developing this a little bit today, so I was thinking about it. But if you don't have the resources to do that, a lot of the times your parents might notice that maybe your kid seems astonishingly lucky and they have never they let's say the kids never actually dropped something. They've knocked plenty of things off the shelf and never broken something once because they've always somehow seemed to manage to catch it, and the thing slowed down a little bit was when it was falling, and they got it and they didn't get in trouble. um, if you didn't have the resources, you might not want your child to even know, and that's what happens a lot. You absolutely could just magically be able to be a really good accountant. That's a big thing that comes into play, is that it kind of enhances certain things about your natural gifts and your natural focus. So you could maybe you're magically able to focus on all the numbers, or maybe if you believe the money's there, it's actually there. Um, and it kind of moves stuff around. There's people with magic that can kind of move stuff around a little bit, in that aspect. So it's both really interesting, but it's also dangerous to use without focus, because if you start bringing it into your life too much, again, you can very easily tap into it for something bad and end up hurting people around you. So most people, unless they have the means, try to make sure that if their kids show magical aptitude, which is still pretty rare. I like that, yeah. Um, but most people, if their kids show magical aptitude, unless they are either quite wealthy, or in one of the careers that's kind of a magical career, they can send they and they can't and they can send their kids to the school. They just kind of leave it be and hope the kid just sort of doesn't really tap into that too much. And kids, you start getting older and you get a little bit less. Kids get a little less imaginative over time, unless they focus on that and they stop thinking, oh, maybe if I don't want that thing to fall, it won't fall. And so they kind of grow out of their aptitudes to a certain degree if they don't sculpt that aptitude. But kind of the main magical careers are like magical political advisor, which I've hinted at a little bit. So somebody who maybe has really good precognition or has really good abilities to like sense somebody's intentions, might work with a government of a kingdom to kind of help navigate all those different political decisions in that way. Magical security, which our character today, Brooke, is a magical security guard. Magical security is a big one, so a lot of people with magic will go into either like the military or just private security. So like in Kai's tale, she ends up working with the magical security force of the kingdom, and those are people with like maybe kind of more of a fighting skill, like maybe something elemental or some kind of precognition that kind of helps them telegraph people's moves, and be able to protect people that way. And then we've got magical healers, so you've got doctors who have the ability to just heal a lot of illnesses in that way, or people who are able to make healing potions. Yeah, it's more of a medieval fantasy. I hesitate to call it medieval because strongly it's a very strongly fantasy world. There's a lot of things about it that are different. Um, there's also not, I'm not doing any like fantasy sexism or fantasy racism or fantasy homophobia. Um, I'm just not interested in playing in that kind of a sandbox, and I think that, as a creator, like think about why things are in your world. I think that really the only um, evil of the real world that carries over is classism and poverty, and eventually war as well. But those are just things that I don't want to go there. I think that a function of fantasy is to be a little bit escapist, and I think that exactly, greed is definitely present, yes, but exactly. I don't think anybody here is super thrilled about any of those things. The world doesn't need it. There's no reason in world for it to be there, especially. I'm not telling an allegory about any of these things to illustrate them. We are having fun in a fantasy world, and I'm not adding those things in just to make it seem more old timey. Um, but it's medieval-esque. So it's kind of, if you wanna picture sort of like a medieval aesthetic, um, please do. If there's fighting that's not with magic, it's going to be with swords. There's gonna be armor. There's gonna be all that good stuff. Um, so yeah, I went a little over when I was gonna actually start the story, but this was a really awesome and constructive conversation. So thank you so much, you guys, for asking all of these good questions and for really getting me thinking. This is the thing. Sorry, I keep wiggling. I just got a swivel chair, and I can't stop swiveling, but I'll get that under control. But seriously, thank you so much for, yeah, like an Ella Enchanted level of medievalness. I like that. I also loved Ella Enchanted. So exactly, that's kind of what we're going for here. Um, I like that a lot. That's perfect. But yeah, I this is the thing that I love so much about doing these streams, is just getting to like bounce ideas off of people, and like you guys have so many amazing ideas, and we end up creating something really cool together. The story hasn't even started yet, and we've already come up with some really awesome things. I am a grad student, so I just finished regular college, and now I'm working on my teaching degree. So yes, I am a college student, but also not quite. Um, but yeah, so give me a second, and I'm gonna get started. Oh, really quick before I get into the story, I'm gonna drop these here links. Um, I hate to start out by asking for money, but also I know that my stream quality isn't quite at 100% necessarily. I want to try to get a new, I want to see if I can get a Wi-Fi router up here to make the Wi-Fi a little bit faster. And it doesn't make sense for me to do that unless I'm really doing streaming on a more professional level. So if you guys do want to help me make this stream a little bit better, keep things going, keep the lights on, I've got my Patreon where you can also do stuff like name a character, see exclusive videos, all kinds of stuff. And my Ko-fi where you can also get my poetry chapbooks. You can get them on Patreon too. But I give a lot if you want to get. I give a lot back if you want to give something. But I'm just gonna throw those up there. Um, Help me with my student loans. I don't need them right now. Um, the only okay thing about this crisis is that the student loans are frozen, but uh, this does help me out quite a bit if you do wanna throw a little change in there. Um, so I'm gonna put my dice away. Yeah, we're all kind of in that state, I think, right now. Um, so yeah, put my dice away in my dice box. I want to show off my dice box again because it's very shiny and it makes me very happy. No, I need to keep my dice out. I lied, I need to keep my dice out. I usually end up, if there's magic and I don't know if it works or not, I usually end up rolling for it. I need this. I got it out for a reason. Um, I'm very professional over here. One woman team. Alright. So, let me begin. Sorry, I forgot. I forgot my main character's name. Oh, I said Brooke, right? That's Brooke. We're telling Brooke's story. I had this all planned out. Yeah, once upon a time. Um, in the magical kingdom of Pavoka, um, Brooke has just started. Hello! In the magical kingdom of Pavoka, Brooke has just started a new job in magical security. Um, After graduating from the academy, Um, I actually rolled for this last time. I can give you the spelling if you wanna know the name and know what to picture. Um, so all right. So in the kingdom of Pavoka, um, a lot of the houses of nobility have a tendency to hire magical security guards. Um, this is partially out of just kind of paranoia. Many of these homes do hold certain treasures and artifacts that somebody might like to get their hands on, maybe, but part of it is just tradition. Every noble house in Pevica hires a magical security guard, and they pay very well for this. Um, Brooke, our hero, was sent by their family to the academy in order to initially to become a doctor. They come from a family of doctors, but when they got to the academy, they found that they didn't have much of an aptitude for the healing arts, but they did have certain skills that would work very well for security, such as precognition, a certain little, not a ton of, uh, just a little glimpses of the future and little glimpses that something might go amiss. Um, and they also found that they were quite handy with sword and really liked the idea of maybe either doing something military or doing something um, with possibly with private security, but the job pays very, very well, and they get to live very close to their family and a little bit. They get to live very close to their family, and that's something that you don't necessarily get if you are in one of the more magical divisions of the military or if you're working in the castle in the capital. So they decided to take this job. They had been hoping for a lot of excitement, but so far there hasn't been too much excitement aside from one incident where the ex-lover of one of the noble's daughters showed up and started singing very, very loudly from the courtyard and had to be removed. Other than that, there hasn't been very much excitement. Brooke has been working for about a month now, and that has been the only incident. The rest of it has just been standing around, looking at beautiful things, hovering in any important meetings that the castle's noblemen might have just to make sure that nothing goes amiss, and of course, just kind of standing and sitting. Um, So Brooke is a little bit annoyed, a little restless, and just kind of every so often we'll just do a little telepathic check to see if there's anybody around with ill intent towards the any of the family or the political attaches living in this manor. And almost nothing comes up. Things are pretty peaceful until at midnight they do a check and they catch something. They just catch a little whisper. It's just the faintest whisper of malice um, nearby, and they can't tell if it is faint malice or if the person who is feeling malicious is trying to cloak what they're thinking and feeling and what their intentions are, perhaps through magic of their own. Um, so we come to our first choice. Is Brooke going to try to check further with magic and push magic a little farther, or rush in, go to the door, hand on their sword, hoping to hoping to catch somebody in the act and get a little bit of an excitement? So I need you guys to decide on this. Um, Let me know what you think. Are we going to investigate further mentally, or are we going to rush in sword blazing? It's still not showing me how many people are watching. All right. So everybody agrees we're investigating with magic first, and that means we're going to roll the dice. So if it is above 10, they're going to get more insight. If it's below 10, their insight's going to be a little iffy. It's not going to work out so well. So I'm going to roll the dice. Oh, that's not good. We have a 3, which is not what you want when this is your job. So, um, I don't have any magic. This is just luck. All right. So they're gonna tune in a little bit further, do some more investigation, and what it seems like to them is that somebody in the street tripped over somebody's foot. They got very angry. They let out a little angry, malicious energy, but everything's fine. Um, so Brooke does this internal investigation, and that's kind of the energy they're getting. That it's just a little bit of petty. Somebody got into just a little accidental trouble, kind of an issue. Um, so so they go back and they sit back down. They're hanging out near the entryway, and they sit back down, and their shift right now goes from um, 5 in the afternoon to, oh shoot, that's too late. Like 5 in the afternoon to like 2 in the morning. They're on a very long shift. That's a long shift, right? I'm bad at time. That's a long shift. To about 2 in the morning, and they sit back down. Nothing's going wrong, they think, and they're sitting on their chair and they just kind of get a little bit dozy, and they know it's their job, but also it's late. It's not supposed to be this late, and all they want to do is sleep. So they're sitting back in their chair and they just start to doze off a little bit. When all of a sudden they hear a noise. It's not a very loud noise. It's just a little shuffle, shuffle, just a little shuffle. And they open their eye very quietly, and they see a cloaked figure just very quietly moving past them. Um, they have not been doing this for years. They've been doing this for a month. They're brand new. They're brand new at their job. Um, but they just kind of open their eyes a little bit and they say, hmm. Oh, no, you're good. You're good. Um, they just kind of keep an eye on. There's this hooded figure moving very, very quietly, very softly, trying not to wake up Brooke. But Brooke is awake, and Brooke wants the advantage of surprise. So Brooke just kind of watches very, very quietly, and they see a flash. They're investigating mentally, and they see a flash, and they see that if they move too quickly and startle this hooded figure has magic and is going to um, use that magic to throw a fireball at them. And that is a fate that really needs to be avoided because um, nobody wants to get burned, and also Brooke isn't super great with different elemental attacks like that. So um, They did a magic investigation. They flipped forward into the future a little bit and got a flash of what'll happen if they startle this hooded figure. Um, so they get up very, very, very slowly and very carefully, move not down the hallway that this person's taking. They're going this way down. They woke up. They heard the shuffling and they woke up and just kind of they saw the person physically and then did a mental investigation. Um, so they there's kind of two ways that the hall branches out from the main hall. Um, the hooded figure has gone to the right, and Brooke very quietly sneaks over to the left and is planning to um, head off this figure when they reach um, the intersection. There's an intersection coming up. So they draw their sword and pardon me, they are just very quietly, just kind of getting ready to make that intersection and try to get the advantage of surprise on this hooded figure, who all they know about is that they are somebody who uses magic and they are probably malicious. Um, we'll find out in a second. So, um, Brooke's getting ready to come up to the intersection. They got their sword drawn, and they're gonna try to surprise this figure. Um, so I think I'm gonna roll. I think I'm gonna roll to see if it works. Um, I got a 14. It's gonna work, kind of. All right. So they they wait right at the end of the hall. They the hooded figure is walking along, and quick as lightning, as soon as they get close, they have their sword drawn and they swing it, and the sword lands right at the hooded figure's throat. Um, and for a minute, Brooke just stands there silently, hoping that there's not still going to be a magic attack. But whoever this hooded figure is, they're not willing to move and risk dying. Um, so that's lucky. And Brooke just kind of waits for a moment and stares at this person. This is the first time they've actually really caught somebody. This is the first time that they've used their sword in a way that was not just during sword practice and training. Um, so they ask this person, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And the person just says, "Silly child, you should have just let me go." And they hear the voice, and it sounds like the voice sounds very tired and a little sarcastic. It sounds like the voice of a woman, and she says, uh, "You don't know what's at stake. Um, I promise you that even though I'm not officially welcome here, I'm welcome here, and you should have just slept. Um, it would have been much better for the whole world." And that is not what you expect to hear from an intruder in the hallway. And Brooke just kind of freezes for a moment and then steps a little closer. Um, ooh, I see we're having a conversation about whether or not magical visions would hold up in a court of law. Um, so definitely Brooke is lucky that they didn't just kill the hooded figure. That could cause a major problem. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like there's so much built on trust. Would they use magic in the courts? Hmm. Yeah, I haven't considered that yet. I'm gonna have to keep thinking about that. Because yeah, somebody could always be lying, and you'd hope with any system you hope that there's checks and balances, but I hadn't considered that yet. Um, I'm gonna have to think about that. All right. So, I mean, the stranger is definitely an intruder coming into a guarded castle, and sneaking by the guards instead of saying, instead of like waking them up and just saying, "Hello, I'm supposed to be here. I have business here. You can check." Um, so it's definitely not an appropriate thing to do. They're definitely crossing some major boundaries. Um, but also, should you just swing a sword at somebody? No. Um, so I digress. All right. Um, so is Brooke gonna put their sword away and have a conversation, or are they gonna double down and ask who this person is and what they're doing here? Um, let me know what you think they should do. Well, yeah, it is pretty aggressive, but also Brooke is absolutely fearing for their life because they know, at least from their magical abilities and their visions, this person has magic and was willing to attack. No, you're not being rude. All right. So, um, Brooke is, uh, yeah, exactly. So Brooke keeps the sword out and demands again, "Who are you? Take down your hood and tell me who you are and what you're doing here." Um, so the woman reaches up, she pulls down her hood, and she says, "My name is Belinda. Um, uh, Lauk, the man who owns this castle, knows me. If he were to be asked officially, he would say that he didn't, but he does know me, and I am very much allowed to be here. Um, you can go wake him up. If you don't believe me, I'll come with you. Um, and we can just get this figured out. I'm here to pick up a bracelet. Um, people aren't supposed to know that I'm taking it, but um, yeah, if you insist on putting me through all of this, I will go up to Locke's room and we can sort this out. Um, so, is Brooke going to take her up to the room to verify, or are they going to remain suspicious? Um, all right. So we've got Brooke's going to take her up to the room. We've got one vote. Brooke's going to take her up to the room, and one vote suspicious. Um, hmm. Yeah. So I think we're gonna lean suspicious, and so Brooke holds her ground, um, holds their ground. Uh, they've got their sword. They start just sort of slowly backing this woman up. They start backing Belinda up. If you've heard my story about Kai, you know who Belinda is a little bit. And they just start backing Belinda up towards the door and saying, "You need to leave. If you um, if you genuinely have business here, you can attend to this business tomorrow. I will ask if you're allowed to be here. Um, in the meantime, you have to go." Um, and the woman starts backing up. Um, So I've got a question for you guys about this woman. Do you think that she's going to attack, or do you think that she is going to uh, comply? Is she going to come back tomorrow? And is she going to come back tomorrow with a letter? Is she going to come back tomorrow maybe without a letter, or without some confirmation? And or is she going to do something aggressive? If I don't get any answers, I think I'm just going to roll on it. All right, she's going to attack. So, um, Brooke is backing Belinda up, and she's stepping back, and all of a sudden, um, she just kind of smiles, and then Brooke's sword is just gone from their hand, and Brooke steps back, starts reaching for they've also got a knife on their person, starts reaching for their knife. They'd rather have their sword, but all of a sudden their sword is just gone, and gets ready to fight. Uh, Belinda raises her hand, and on her hand she's wearing a ring with uh, bright blue gemstones around it. And even though it's pretty dark, Brooke knows that they're blue because they can see these gemstones glowing. Um, and Brooke's getting ready to try to defend the best that they can. And all of a sudden, there's just a blast from the ring, and um, Brooke is knocked over. Um, and actually, I'm gonna see. I'm gonna roll to see if they get knocked over and get back up or are unconscious. Oh, yep, that's a one right there. They are knocked out for until the morning. Um, so Brooke doesn't wake up for hours, and in the morning, um, they they wake up, and sitting there are the one of the uh, one of the castle. It's not really a castle; it's more of a manor. One of the manor's other guards, um, their mom, who's a doctor, and the lord of the castle, Locke. Um, and they're all just kind of standing there. Brooke is on a little cot, and they're all just kind of standing there, waiting for Brooke to wake up. Um, so Brooke wakes up, and first their mom is just like, "What on earth are you doing? You need to. I don't. I think this job is too dangerous for you. I think that you should. I think that you should. You need to come home." Blah, 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 blah. And their mom has been casting just waves of healing energy that have finally managed to wake Brooke up. Um, and Brooke's about to start to argue, and she casts another wave of healing energy, and it kind of moves through Brooke, and Brooke just kind of like starts shuddering a little bit because it just magic feels kind of weird, and they're just kind of like ugh, and they don't really say anything. They don't have any arguments about whether or not they should come home. And Next, the captain of the cast, the other guard who works at the manor, just kind of says, "Seems like you got yourself in some trouble there, huh?" And they're just kind of like, "Yes, last night, there was a woman. She was a very powerful magic user. She snuck into the castle. I don't know how she got past me." And they start fighting a little bit. I think that she must have used some magic to get past me. But I woke up and realized that somebody was moving through the hallway. I tried to head her off, and she, for a minute, she pretended to be listening to me. She said that I should let her in, and then she made my sword disappear, and she knocked me out with a magic ring. Um, and Brooke is trying to stay very, very cool and very chill during this argument. Um, and during not during this argument, but during the telling of this tale. But they're not cool. They're not chill. They're very freaked out. They weren't really prepared for something like this. And they are not happy. um, so when uh, the sorry, I lost words for a second. Sometimes that happens. So uh, Brooke's mom just looks really appalled by this. The other guard also looks very concerned and is also kind of seeming to think, I'm not sure if I'm prepared for this kind of a situation. I was expecting a little bit more, a little bit more peace and less adventure and more things that I could deal with. And the Lord of the Castle looks very, very solemn and doesn't really say anything. And he asks, what did the woman look like? Um, and Brooke starts describing her. She was tall. She had, it looked like she had kind of uh, reddish hair. He didn't see what they didn't see what color her eyes were, and that's about all they've got. Um, and Lord Locke says, "Did she, by any chance, introduce herself as Belinda?" And Brooke says, "Yes, as a matter of fact, she did." And the Lord of the Castle just kind of nods, and then he says, "All right, you two, I need you to leave. Brooke and I are going to have a conversation." And so uh, Brooke is feeling very freaked out. Um, and as both their mom leaves and one of the other guards in the castle leaves, and they're worried all of a sudden that maybe they should have listened to Belinda and let her come in and take the bracelet that she was after. Um, and So Lord Locke is just it sits there very quietly for a moment and says, finally, he says, "You did the right thing. You should not have let her in, but I understand why she might have thought that she would be welcome." Um, and Brooke is is a little bit surprised by that and is kind of like, I don't understand. You don't need to tell me if you don't want to, but if I am going to keep dealing with threats of this nature, I would prefer to have some clarity. Um, and just tries to be as polite about it as possible, but also just very, very concerned. And Lord Locke sighs for a moment and finally says, um, in my youth, I was friends with many different people who went to the local magic academy. One of those people was a woman named Belinda. Um, Another was a man named um, Arthur, and um, we were very close for a very long time. After a while, Belinda started talking a lot about magic and the way that this kingdom was run and the way that the world was run, and she had some rather radical ideas, which I thought were very interesting. I was looking at one day inheriting this position and having some influence politically, and I thought I found her very compelling, and I found her arguments very compelling. And when she started talking about the possibility that people who were magic users should be more involved in the running of things and should be doing more to um, influence the way that the world worked, I started to agree with her a little bit, but only for a little while. In time, I saw that there were flaws with the way that people use people use magic. There are absolutely people who may have certain gifts and then lie about what they see. And the power that magic has can be intimidating to people that don't have it. And I stopped uh, I stopped associating with her quite as much. But a few weeks ago, I received a letter from her, and it was a very strange letter. It was talking about uh, how she wanted me to join a group that she was part of. She said that it was mostly magic users, but that some people who were involved, who helped them, were not magic users, and that I would be incredibly helpful. She said that um, there's a lot of danger in the world right now with there's a certain deep stabilization happening of different magical artifacts, and she asked that even if I do not join in her group, that I send her this bracelet. It is an artifact that my family has held for generations, and it bestows a certain level of charm and of kind of charisma um, that could hypothetically be used for political ends. And she said that her organization was trying as quietly as they could to keep magical artifacts in their hands instead of in the hands of people who might not be able to protect them as well. Um, I declined to send her the bracelet, but I also did not report her activity to the king, and perhaps I should have done that, but she has been my friend for a long time before she wasn't. I don't know if last night she intended to actually steal the bracelet or if she was simply trying to make a point about it and get me to give it to her. Um, but either way, it is still there. It was not taken from the archives where it was kept. Um, but there is the matter of what happened to you last night, and that alarms me greatly. If she had struck you any harder, she could have killed you. And I don't know if she intended to kill you or if she simply intended to send a message, and that message went a little bit awry. Um, and so um, he kind of concludes the story and says, "I would appreciate it if you do not spread word of this. I will handle it myself. If you can resume your post tonight, um, please do. And if she comes, just let her in." Um, and Brooke seems kind of taken aback by this and says, Are you certain? Um, because if I do let her in, I can't take that back." And Lord Locke says, "Yes. As a matter of fact, I may contact her. Consider this my permission. If she does return, just um, let her do whatever she needs to do. If she wants to come see me, let her come see me. Take her to come see me. If she wants the artifact only, give her that." Um, and he um, he thinks for a moment and then he adds, "But I think that you weren't well armed enough in general. If there are any more threats from these kinds of people, I need you to be ready. Um, I have I have kind of not so much a gift as a loan for you. There is a sword in my family's vault that can turn back It's not a sword, it's a shield in my family's vault, and it can turn back magical attacks. I will give this to you, and I will let you carry it for as long as you are working for me, assuming, of course, that you will still continue to work for me. Um, and Brooke says, "All right." Um, None of this really sits very well with them, but they don't really know what else to say. They've just found out that there's a lot more going on in the world than they had realized, and they don't really know what to do about it. So they just they go home and they get ready for their shift the next night when Belinda is set to return. Um, that night they're waiting in the hall and they have their magic shields and um, Belinda shows up and she says, "I received Locke's note. Um, will you please show me to his chamber?" So I got a choice for you guys. Is Brooke going to obey orders or freak out and try to send her away? No, I was gonna get a drink from my water bottle and I forgot to refill it. All right, they're gonna obey orders. So goes with um, Brooke goes with the sorceress Belinda and is very just kind of unsettled and is watching her very, very closely. And she seems kind of casual, and she's just like, "Oh, sorry for yesterday, but I'm sure you understand." And Brooke doesn't really understand, but they don't say anything. They're just kind of walking along very much on their guard, and also just trying now that they're closer to Belinda, just kind of get a read on her intentions, and so they're kind of investigating a little bit, and they get like a little hint of they get a hint of frustration, a hint of satisfaction, a little bit of friendship, and a little bit of oh, I don't know what the word is, but that feeling when you're very self-assured and you feel like you're doing the right thing. That kind of a hint of self-assurance, and Brooke feels very comforted by that. At least just that there's not the same kind of malice that they had perceived initially. Um, and they knock on the door um, to Lord Locke's chambers, and he answers. He kind of sticks his head out and says, um, "It's good to see you again." And Belinda smiles very, very charmingly and says, "Oh, it's good to see you again too. We have a lot to discuss." Um, and Brooke tries to come into the room as well, um, and is is rebuffed by Lord Locke and who says to wait outside. So, is Brooke going to eavesdrop, or is Brooke just gonna kind of try not to try to be on guard, but not cross any lines? All right, we've got one vote for eavesdrop. All right, so Brooke is going to eavesdrop, and I know it's very unprofessional, but um, in light of the circumstances and in light of um, how dangerous Belinda clearly is, um, they just kind of press their ear up to the door and try to hear whatever they can. And it's very difficult at first because both Belinda and Lord Locke are speaking very softly, and at first all they hear are just kind of little whispers about just kind of like back in the good old days. But it becomes clear after a while that Belinda is really trying to push Locke to reconsider um, joining her organization. Brooke finds out that the organization is calls themselves the Golden Order, um, and that they are made up of not just and Belinda's very clear and says, "We're not just some kind of fringe group, Locke. We have um, we have many highly placed sorcerers the in all of the Seven Kingdoms. Many people you'd be surprised at the former classmates of mine that you knew who would have joined us. You know how sensible Ted was. Ted has joined us. Uh, Kaylee's joined us. There's all kinds of people who have uh, seen that there are not only are there problems with the way that we conduct things right now, but that we are not safe. Um, did you heard about what happened recently with uh, the the seven cursed swords? One of them was broken, another was stolen, and it was only really through luck that they were able to be contained, and that's still up in the air. There's these artifacts need to be dealt with and used by people who genuinely have the kingdom's best interests at heart, and we're the only people who can do it. Um, and Locke is quiet for a minute, and he says, "I respect what you're trying to do, and I believe that you have the best of intentions, but I cannot be party to this. I can't be party to destroying our way of life, to possibly terrorizing all of the populations. There's no guarantee that you will be able to stay true to your intentions once you have all of these artifacts. Some of them twist people, like the swords do. Some of them are highly volatile. Um, I cannot support you in doing this. I hope that we can remain friends and that you can think of me warmly." And Belinda stops him and says, "We are far past the point of being um, being able to just um, quietly put this away. How do I know that you're not going to tell the queen? How do I know that you will maintain security? I don't." Um, and Brooke starts kind of like listening telepathically, trying to forecast what's going to happen next. They're really thinking about crashing into the door and intervening. And they start trying to forecast and just reach forward into the next couple of minutes just to see, is she going to leave peacefully, or is she going to uh, attack Locke? And I'm gonna roll for that because it's a magic check. The dice haven't been on Brooke's side today. Uh, we'll see what they do right now. Okay, so we got a 14. And I think we're gonna have that be successful. Um, so Brooke catches a flash of um, Belinda striking out with her magic ring that she's wearing. Pardon me. And uh, Brooke, they see this flash, this hideously bright blue light, and Lord Locke falling down, either dead or horrifically injured, and Brooke decides that they have to crash in and open the door, and they go to open the door and they find that it's locked. They do a little unlocking charm. It takes a minute to get it to activate, but they're able to open the door, and they walk in just as Belinda is raising her hand to strike. They immediately raise their shield that they've got, and they step in and they turn. They throw the shield up, jumping in front of Lord Locke, and the spell, part of it dissipates, and part of it back on turns back against Belinda. She falls to the ground and seems to be unconscious. Um, but they're not taking any chances, and they check. They kind of nudge her and find that she is unconscious, and they ask immediately. They ask Lord Locke if he's all right, and he says, uh, I am unharmed. I would be better if an old friend of mine had not tried to kill me, but I am as well as can be expected, I suppose. Did you foresee the attack? And Brooke just says yes, doesn't reveal that they were eavesdropping. Just says yes, I foresaw the attack, and I stepped in the moment I could. And um, they just kind of like wait for instructions, and Locke sends them to go get a doctor for Belinda, who is in pretty bad shape. Because the blow is intended to kill, and she's not dead, but she still received a lot of it. And so uh, Brooke goes and gets their mom, and their mom comes and tries to help, and is able to kind of stabilize her, but she's still unconscious. And for a while things are just kind of quiet, and then at the end of the day, somebody comes uh, claiming that they have a friend that they need to retrieve, and Lord Locke kind of peers down, and he seems to recognize the man. He goes up and he says, Arthur, how are you? And Arthur says, I'm well. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Belinda was always impulsive. I'm sorry that things got out of hand. I can take it from here. And Locke just kind of agrees. And so Arthur takes away the the unconscious sorceress, and after a while, things start to get back to their normal routine. For a while, the whole manor is just kind of a buzz with gossip about what happened, what didn't happen, and security starts getting tightened. A lot more guards, both magical and non-magical, are hired to kind of keep the castle safe. And Brooke uh, goes back to work with just kind of this knowledge that the world is far different than they'd previously believed, and just kind of on edge and waiting for the next thing to happen. And I think this is where we'll end our story for now. I'm hoping to eventually kind of bring Brooke back a little bit and pick things back up, but I think that's a good place to end for today. So thank you so much for sticking with me for the story. It turned out really cool. I'm working on I'm getting better and better at telling these stories all the time, I think. But just gonna put my dice away. But I'm so grateful that you guys are sticking with me. Oh, you're so sweet. I'm so glad you came. And I hope that you'll tune in for the next one. I'm thinking of also doing Friday at 4. I'm going to drop all my links. One of them is a Discord invite. And if you want to join my Discord, you can talk about all this stuff, including the stories. You'll always get notified when I'm going to tell a story, and we can chat about different stuff. It's a pretty nice little spot. Um, I've also got my Patreon and my Ko-fi, just in case you want to, if you want to read my chapbooks that I've written of poetry, if you want to get personal book recommendations, name a character, stuff like that. That's all on Patreon. And I've also got my blog in case you want to check out some of my poetry. But yeah, there's my links. This was really fun, and I am very glad that we did it. Oh no! Thank you. Good to hear from you, Sandra. It's tough. I feel like always one service or the other is a little bit on the fritz. But yeah, I'm so glad you made it. I always love seeing you here. You could probably tell because my face always lights up when I can see your name. But it's so great having you here, and thank you, Princess, and thank you. I don't know if we've still got Jesse, but thank you, Jesse, and thank you, C, who were here for quite a long time. But yeah, it was a really lovely stream, and I am so glad that I got to spend this time with you today. I have started looking forward to my streams so much. It's great just chatting with people and talking about things and creating something cool together. So it was really lovely. I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.